Media Zealot presents another silly series with another stupid name. This is Villains Too Stupid to Win. Yes, just like most advanced sci-fi civilizations, most villains are no doubt intentionally designed to fail. But in the spirit of wickedness, let's pick on them anyway. This series will focus on villains from any genre and will include individuals, organizations, and non-sci-fi civilizations. So please feel free to start cranking out your suggestions in the comments. Welcome to episode 1. It's The Smokers from Waterworld. The original big budget blowout, it was doomed to a thorough panning before it was even released. It's Kevin Costner's jump the shark moment in Waterworld. A movie that has since been described by some as problematic for its treatment of women. But literally the only problem I'm seeing is that most of our main good guy characters are dicks, and the story arguably doesn't do enough to change this perception. Long ago the ice caps melted, and somehow that created enough water to almost completely cover the land. You just know the Science aliens would be all in on this shit. The last remaining dregs of humanity band together, living in peace and prosperity, making the most of their new lives. Nah jokes, they're fighting over trash. Mad Max hits the water. What's next? Mad Max on ice?
Never seen that before.
And that's where our cartoonish villains come in. The Smokers. They're an industrial pirate cult. I can go along with that. These guys are all about hooning around in their motorboats, chuffing on ciggies, swilling whiskey, and spraying bullets and particulates all over anyone who gets near them. The leader of this cult is the Deacon. It's Dennis Hopper playing another stupid dystopian dictator. He's gotten over the germophobia, gained a few more idiot cousins.
What's that cousin's name?
And he's leading an all-new band of even dirtier crust punks. That these degenerates can remain so filthy in a water world is genuinely impressive. But a lack of cleanliness should be no surprise, since this cult venerate their ship's original greasy captain, Joseph Hazelwood. A real-life person and most captainy looking guy ever, who was lynched in the court of public opinion after his third mate crashed the Exxon Valdez into an Alaskan reef while he was sleeping off a bender. But in this world, Saint Joe never lost his captaincy and ended up riding out the apocalypse with his massive hoard of cigarettes, liquor, firearms, bullets, spam, and of course oil. The apparent founder of this nihilistic bunch of stupid cretins. Though the Smokers are doing pretty well for themselves considering their circumstances, their obsession with destruction doesn't bode well for their future or that of humanity's. Point 1. An extremely precarious world, even without the Smokers going around blowing everything up. But the easiest thing to blow up is undoubtedly them. Waterworld takes place hundreds of years in the future. Reliable outside sources put it as late as the year 2500, and it's a magical world filled with materials and goods that have anti-entropic properties, despite being absolutely pounded by the elements.
Thermal and ultraviolet radiation are at hazardous levels.
Everything seems to be in remarkably good nick for its age. But life on the water is still extremely precarious. It's a hard lesson in the fragility of existence, as anything lost below the waves is gone for good, unless you're a fishman freak.
I think they hang you for that.
But that doesn't stop the Smokers from going around laying waste to what little remains. These pirates are clinging to the old world and the technologies that probably contributed to its downfall, and now they seem intent on destroying the new one.
One wonders how your race has survived, having so much fun.
Every piece of material is treated as precious by most sea dwellers, but not to the Smokers. We don't see them doing much of their typical looting, as now they've dedicated themselves entirely to stalking this little girl, who may have a map leading to dry land tattooed on her back. But since dry land could still be a myth at this point, there is no excuse for them being as wasteful as they are, even now. So the Smokers have no qualms about blasting the crap out of probably the most stable living platform there is outside of their own ship. But in saying that, if they're prepared to sacrifice a functioning motorboat to get in there, I guess anything goes. A deleted scene suggests the Smokers have completely sunk at least a few of these things before.
There used to be atolls on every horizon. Where the hell are they all going?
Well, we sunk a few.
They do at least claim this atoll, but of course they spectacularly failed their main objective. Later, after sassing Fishdick to get at this girl, instead of taking his trimaran, surely one of the best sailboats left on Earth, they instead decide to burn it, leaving heaps of his valuable stuff behind. But our hero can be pretty wasteful at times too. The smokers may love burning and blowing stuff up, but in this world the easiest thing to blow up is undoubtedly the smokers themselves. For their most serious pattern of stupidity is their inability to keep sources of ignition away from combustible liquids. On an ocean planet, it really shouldn't be this hard. During assault missions, the Deacon sits atop this mini fuel tanker.
Perhaps this type of energy is beyond our sensor bandwidth.
Its main storage tank looks to be a sack of patchwork leather. These guys are smoking cigs nearby, with rusty combustion engines spluttering about, powering watercraft that are seemingly made of explodium, while incompetent visually impaired henchmen spray bullets all over the place. A few more concerns here. Why is this guy still hammering away at the atoll, which is now full of smokers?
Answer me this, somebody. Why is that boat still firing?
And also, why was the Deacon and his tanker sack even hanging around over here near the target zone?
Since our shield strength is non-existent, I would not recommend it.
Isn't this the command and refueling ship? Keep your distance, buddy.
So that mistakes like that will be minimized.
Back at the smokers HQ, the D's. You'd think this kind of shit would be locked down, but it definitely ain't. Their massive tank of oil is under constant threat of ignition.
Is the mother low? On your toes.
I probably don't need to tell you how insanely stupid and pointless this is. The Deacon just gambled with his life and the lives of all of his people, betting it all on henchmen who aren't exactly reliable.
You are a total freaking retard.
Hey man, even good henchmen could miss that catch on a bad day. You're relying on the fast reflexes of a chain-smoking, malnourished grease monkey.
They are suffering the initial stages of carbon dioxide poisoning.
There are ports to the oil chamber seemingly opened up everywhere, allowing access to the riffraff of smoker society. All it would take is one accident or one smoker with suicidal tendencies beyond the norm, and boom, it's all over. But I guess that's not too bad of an outcome, all things considered. The smartest smoker is probably the oil prisoner who welcomed his death. Ironically, also one of the only smokers who doesn't smoke.
Oh, thank God.
So of course our good guy defeats the smokers almost entirely with nothing more than an ancient flare.
Fire suppression system is out!
And in the process creates a massive ecological disaster of his very own. Not to mention, he probably just sent the largest remaining chunk of the human population down the gurgler. I guess that's still a win? This rusty old oil tanker already had no business being seaworthy. But let's be honest, it should have been blown up and sunk ages ago. Though when it comes to management shortcomings, the smoker's lack of fire safety is just the tip of the iceberg. Point 2. The smokers waste almost everything they have. They could have dominated Waterworld and maybe found dry land by allocating their resources properly and acting with benevolence. Firstly, let's get the obligatory praise out of the way. The smokers seem to be quite capable in several regards. They are using and maintaining the bulk of the advanced technology that remains on Waterworld. They could almost be considered for my other series.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
The smokers must have an industrial engineering program to even pull off their shtick, and a fuel refining operation would be essential. They may even be manufacturing firearms and ammunition. They are capable of sea-based surprise attacks and sieges. They even have a goddamn plane.
It appears to be an ancient Earth aircraft.
And Jack Black is the pilot. This is awesome.
That's a nice touch.
The fact that they've managed to supply their large population with enough food and water is a triumph in itself, and bordering on the miraculous. They have somehow rationed their oil to last over 200 years. Though this boggles the mind, as from what we see, they are chugging through this stuff like there's no tomorrow. And there pretty much isn't. It is said there is enough oil left for a few months at best.
We'll burn through that in 2 lunars.
Sweet Joe, will somebody please tell me what's happening to this place?
The only thing that is important is the tattooed girl. We don't spare any goat juice finding her. We don't waste it anywhere else. You cancel all those tractor pulls and all that stuff until later.
Though the Deacon was smart enough to cancel the tractor pulls and focus their energy reserves in pursuit of dry land, the fact they were having tractor pulls in the first place is obviously very wasteful, and they're only cancelled temporarily, of course.
Until later.
The Deacon himself has a Pope-mobile which he uses to travel through the ship, burning fuel for the sake of bestowing the masses with the sacrament of ciggies. Their cigarette smoking is a massive waste on its own, and I'm not talking about health risks here. Paper is one of the most sought after commodities in Waterworld. The smokers are puffing away on gold every time they light up.
This is an unnecessary indulgence.
And filters, yeah, I'm pretty sure those would come in handy. In terms of value, surely the fuel, gunpowder, bullets, and other resources expended on these pirate missions would usually outweigh the loot gained.
A crime must have a logical purpose.
In resource-scarce Waterworld, the smokers were already obscenely wealthy before they ever mugged anyone, but they squander this advantage, utterly wasting the opportunity to properly utilize the resources and labor they already have. They could generate far more wealth and essentially run this world without ever firing a shot.
It is about finding the seeds of order, even in the midst of profound chaos.
This is truly their only viable option for survival, since even their pillaging is based on an ever-dwindling population of people and resources. The smokers are plagued by a severe lack of long-term thinking.
What do you propose?
It might not be as much fun, but the smokers should be jerry-rigging stuff to distill and filter seawater,
In a goddamn jar.
and commit themselves to a large-scale commercial fishing operation.
And risk dermal dysplasia. No thank you.
We see a few plants floating around. A growing operation wouldn't be off the cards. Since the oil will inevitably run out, fuel should only be consumed as an absolute last resort or in working towards a long-term plan. I'm afraid the Deacon will need to get over his hatred of sails, because building some sailboats is an absolute must. I mean, it's not like their motorboats and jet skis have the fuel capacity or are fast enough to catch sailboats in a favourable wind anyway. It's time for an upgrade.
Vulcans do not hydrosail.
With the amount of industrial material and engineering knowledge these guys have to work with, they could maybe pull off a wind turbine or even a mini sub. There's a lot of great stuff to be had below the waves. With their shit locked down, the smokers should have enough excess hydro, seafood, and other goods to sustain a massive amount of people. It's time to get networking. We're talking trade routes and deals, diplomacy, bribery, whatever brings all the populations you can find under your wing.
Well, I pray that you're joking.
The survival of the human race is at stake after all. And speaking of that, the gene pool is getting pretty limited, especially around here.
Announce me, cousin.
Bless you, cousin, bless you. Bless all you got over there.
Maybe some more people would immigrate to your ship if it wasn't a death trap. While you're at it, gather up all the fishman freaks and put those SOBs to work. Got a map that needs figuring out? Cooperation is your best course of action. Even if there was no map, the smokers could possibly find dry land without it. They could spend their days grid searching the globe, using the stars to determine their position. The plane could scan for dry land, vessels, and human populations. The Ds could be slowly rowed or towed into a new area as necessary, all the while connecting every human population and collecting every scrap of paper they can find, improving their knowledge base and searching for any clues about the location of the old world's most elevated areas.
Perhaps that would be the best approach.
No one's saying it would be easy, as the coordinates of dry land show it to be Mount Everest. It's most likely the only land there is out there.
I'd never have guessed.
But it's not like they were doing much that was productive before. It's worth a shot. Or you could just blow everyone to hell. Okay then. The way the Deacon really runs his shit is obviously a far cry from the whimsical scenario I just subjected you to.
There is nothing to report about them that would compare with your story.
In reality, he bribes his population into submission using a supply of finite resources, and now with a false promise of dry land.
Dry land is not just our destination.
but it is our destiny!
A mutiny will surely come eventually, since they have no hope of finding land in the immediate future. But the Deacon is right that his deception will hold them at bay for now.
So which way we rolling? I don't have a goddamn clue. Don't worry. They'll roll for a month before they figure out I'm faking it.
Particularly naive.
Even if the smokers somehow miraculously got their bearings and claimed the land, it's not like that would be a good outcome for anyone. Point 3. Their ham-fisted plan had no hope of ever finding land. Even if they found it, you just know that would be the next thing they would destroy. So let's look at the plan the smokers actually went with. They've heard whispers of this girl who has a tattoo that leads to dry land. So they send a spy into this atoll to snoop around by antagonizing everyone. He confirms the girl is there, and you've seen the rest. These guys are pillaging all the time, yet they can't seem to hit fish stick. It might be their poorly cobbled together firearms though. They can hit the side of a barn, but that's about it. In the ensuing chaos, the girl escapes. In a sailboat. Those things sure are hard to catch.
Good. I don't go too far now.
There were far better ways to go about this. Like maybe use the spy that you already have in there. Surely they could figure out a way to get a message or signal over the wall indicating the girl is indeed here. Kill a few guards and open the gates in the dead of night. You might as well try that first. There may be no need to waste all these resources. But eventually the smokers finally snatch this sproglet.
Does that mean anything to you at all? No.
At which point we discover that no one in their ranks ever had a hope in hell of figuring out this map thing.
You got that tattoo figured out yet?
It'd be easier if it was flat. Big and flat. It needs to be flat.
What do you got in mind?
Well, you cut it off her back, you stretch it, mount it, give us a proper look.
And they seemingly have no plan to resolve this massive problem.
Oh, you want details? Well, I'm not telling these savages that we haven't solved the map yet. Now, I promised them results, and I'll get them if I gotta cut them out of her goddamn back.
And that is a non sequitur. Would you please hand me a burrito?
The Deacon and his inbred inner circle aren't just lying to everyone else about their abilities to translate this map, but they're almost lying to themselves as well.
This kind of thinking is only going to make you feel worse.
Once the Marliner messes them up real good, the Deacon's last play is to fly off with this girl. I am impressed he can fly this aircraft. But we've already established the Deacon himself has no idea what this map says. So I guess he's hoping when he runs out of fuel he'll happen to crash into dry land? Okay, maybe he's going to the atoll to stare at the map for a while.
I'm afraid there's no longer time for that.
It's probably for the best that the smokers never had a chance of achieving their goal, as it's obvious by now. They would mess the land up as badly as they do everything else. And this isn't even speculation, because the Deacon essentially lays out their agenda.
The tree will ram it! 'Cause I'm talking progress here! Yes, sir! I'm talking development! For we shall suck and savor the sweet flavor of dry land.
It's not like that would be a total loss for the smokers. They might end up with a barren rock on which to fish and exist. But I wouldn't exactly call that winning. Thanks for watching, subscribe for Dry Land, and thrash your flippers over that like button.